I mean, Angela Rayner was banging on about Islamophobia, and now the Labour Party are going hell for leather to root out Islamophobia. They're going to legislate, against Islamophobia. So I decided to ask a really difficult question, Martin, which was, I asked her to define what Islamophobia actually meant, and she couldn't tell me. The lunatics have taken over the asylum.
We know that this authoritarian Labour government under Two Tier Keir Starmer wants to criminalise speech that doesn't serve their political purposes. Just take that in for a moment. It's terrifying. So not content having jailed ordinary Brits for inartfully expressing their fury over mass immigration on the day of the Southport massacre, it is now looking to make so-called Islamophobia illegal. I think that's chilling, especially for me as a gay man. I mean, what is the government saying? Am I not allowed to oppose a religion that simply doesn't believe that I should be able to exist? I'm sure many women feel the same way. So Reform UK's Lee Anderson put a simple but absolutely critical question on this to the Deputy Prime Minister Angela Rayner in the House of Commons.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Could the Secretary of State please explain to me and the House what the government's definition of Islamophobia actually is? Secretary of State.
Well, I say to the honourable member that a new definition must be given careful consideration so that it comprehensively reflects multiple perspectives and considers potential implications for different communities. And we're actively considering our approach to Islamophobia, including definitions, and we'll provide further updates on this in due course.
Do you know what? I think that word salad was so pathetic, so non-committal, that perhaps Angela Rayner, and I didn't think I'd ever say this, would be better off dancing some more back in Ibiza. Okay. But back to the serious issue. Lee described the situation as unbelievable, bemoaning, quote, "You couldn't make this up," before labelling Rayner and her ilk as lunatics during a feisty appearance on GB News.
I mean, Angela Rayner was banging on about Islamophobia, and now the Labour Party are going hell for leather to root out Islamophobia. They're going to legislate, against Islamophobia. So I decided to ask a really difficult question, Martin, which was, I asked her to define what Islamophobia actually meant, and she couldn't tell me. The lunatics have taken over the asylum.
It's been posted on social media now. You put it out there. It's out of over 500,000 clips. I think it's a fair question to ask what something is, to define something, if that could mean people getting lengthy criminal records, because that seems to be the direction of travel. You think that this argument about free speech over the summer has taken a dramatic downturn?
Well, it does. I mean, I sat in the studio just a few months ago, Martin, before the general election, discussing Islamophobia and some of the comments I made about Mayor Khan. And I said at the time, I'd asked many MPs from all parties to define what Islamophobia actually meant. Nobody can tell you. Yet they're going to legislate against something that they don't know what it is. It's absolute madness. I mean,
I completely agree with Lee on this. It is absolute madness. It's actually Orwellian to say you intend to make something you literally cannot define illegal. Turning Point UK agrees, posting on X, despite Labour constantly harping on about quote-unquote Islamophobia, they can't define it. How can people be arrested and jailed for something the government can't even define? But what we can increasingly define is the Islamic threat to the UK. A threat which actually, if we're honest, and the MSM won't talk about this, but it wants to destroy much of what we have built up culturally and religiously while challenging our tolerant society. There's been so many examples of this lately, but I want you to look at this video.
Here is not Salwar Kameez. This Salwar Kameez has been made to turn into for the streets. I'll explain to you why. What the is this? What the is this? Sis, why is your Salwar 3/4? 3/4 the Salwar, yeah? Boom, now you can see through the mother arms.
A British man, horrified, angry, sweary about the fact that that outfit showed off a woman's ankle. Now, our superstar panellist Alani Dowding posted that on X and responded saying, if Angela Rayner wants to redefine Islamophobia, how about this? I am very worried and afraid of men who get this angry and triggered at seeing a woman's ankle and arms. Just like the 3 women violently assaulted at a petrol station, Mohammed Hassan didn't like how they dressed. And she's right to point that out. I will also point out that Mohammed Hassan escaped jail, even though he beat up 3 women at a petrol station because of how they were dressed. Now, Darren Grimes posted a video of what looked like London's Whitechapel tube station with the caption, "Would you know this was London if you had been in a coma since the 1950s and woke up today?" Watch this and just have a think about that question. The acclaimed independent journalist Andy No posted video of an Islamic rally in London at the weekend. London. Now, religious leaders have been broadly quiet on the destruction of the West. I mean, the Pope, do you remember last week he suggested it is actually morally wrong not to accept migrants? But perhaps things could be changing. Listen to the Catholic Bishop Athanasius Schneider, who has warned Europe of the mass Islamization. Sorry, that's a mouthful going on. Watch.
Yes, this is very serious. Now we are witnessing an invasion. They are not refugees. No, this is an invasion of mass Islamization of Europe, which already went on for at minimum 50, 60 years, the Islamization in Europe. But now it is in mass. It is very evident. And so this is a global political agenda by the powerful of the world to destroy Europe culturally and religiously. I mean, to destroy Christianity ultimately in Europe, with the help of the massive Islamic population. And I was reading recently an article of a sociologist who made a calculation that maybe in 30 or 40 years, when it's now going on, so the majority of the population of Europe will be Islamic. Europe will be Islamic when this will go on, because the European people have almost no children, 1 or 2. The Muslims there, they have 5, 6 to 10 children, and so it is, you can only make mathematics, and then you can see that they will be in the majority.
Now, it's not palatable for some reason to have that discussion in polite society, certainly not the mainstream media or amongst the political elites. But according to that bishop, there is now a global agenda to destroy Europe culturally and religiously. Yes, our government's priority isn't protecting our borders or our culture, but rather trying to punish those of us who raise issues with things like the introduction of Sharia law through the back door in the UK. To react to that and all of the day's big stories, let me bring in my superstar panel. And today I'm delighted to be joined by one of our favourites, Reform UK's Howard Cox, the brilliant man behind the Fair Fuel campaign, who spends his life fighting for the rights of motorists, among other things too. And joining us for the first time, a friend of mine, the independent journalist Tom Sullivan. Great to have you both here. So Howard Cox, great for your party there, actually challenging, actually opposing this government, which is very unpopular because the Conservatives have just completely disappeared. Did you think that Lee Anderson humiliated Angela Rayner? I mean, he calls her a lunatic because she simply couldn't define Islamophobia in any way. She was stumped.
You're absolutely right, Dan, and thanks for having us on again. Lee had it spot on, as usual. I'm a good friend of Lee's. I work with Lee, and you watch me, he always hits things the nail on the head perfectly with any situation. And he's quite right to say that the lunatics have taken over the asylum. That's what's happening. This amoebic group of new front benchers, can't answer questions. And it's not just about Islamophobia, it's other things like net zero. When you ask questions to someone like Ed Miliband, he can't answer questions. They keep coming back, well, we've got the mandate from the people. What they forget is they haven't got the mandate from the people. It's because most people didn't turn up to vote.
Chris Rose posted on X about this. Lee Anderson asked a simple question for the Secretary of State to clarify their official definition of Islamophobia. Labour plan to root out something they can't even define. Complete word salad from Angela Rayner. And Tom Sullivan, I'm so concerned about this because if you make Islamophobia illegal, does that mean that as a gay man, I can't say that this is a religion, this is a doctrine that I do not support because it literally advocates for my destruction?
Well, this is the thing, Dan. There's so many of these words: racist, fascist, misogynist, sexist, Islamophobic. The list just grows every day, which are just used to shut people down and stop conversations from going on. And in answer to your question, Lee Anderson did own Angela Rayner, and he has form for it. And it reminded me of an incident a few months ago where he was chairing a select committee, and there was the chief of the Dorset Fire Brigade Authority or something, and she had stated that her own force was institutionally racist. And Lee Anderson said, okay, can you give me an example of some unfair advantages that white people have in your force? And she said, what do you mean? And he repeated it, and she goes, oh, there aren't any. And then he said, well, how is it institutionally racist? And the answer she gave was exactly as you just said. Oh, I'll have to get back to you on that. So all these words, they're just thrown around to, control speech. I mean, the chairman of Howard's party, Reform UK, is a practicing Muslim of Pakistani origin. I'm of half Turkish origin. My grandparents and extended family are Muslim. Okay. It's not about being, having any type of hatred or whatever. It's simply about being able to talk about what is going on in our country. And the more they restrict us from talking about that, the more people will kind of fester in the shadows and in the corners. And eventually it will blow up, as it inevitably does. And we have, kind of violent scenes that we saw a few weeks ago.
Indeed. And that's why Starmer, I think, has decided his solution is to crack down on free speech, is to crack down on freedom of expression. And I believe making Islamophobia illegal is part of that. But he's also decided there's a very clear bogeyman. And his bogeyman that can be blamed for everything is the so-called far right. Now, who does he mean? Who does he mean? Have a think about that, but watch what he had to say.
I am worried about the far right. I'm worried about populism and nationalism and the politics of the easy answer, the snake oil, if you like. And I think it's very important that we have a debate about how we confront that. My own personal view is that through delivery, through showing that there are progressive democratic answers to the many challenges we face is the way forward. But yes, that's a discussion that I'm very keen to have because I think it's a very real threat. I am worried.
Now, Howard, the laughable thing about that is, he's talking about you. He's talking about Reform UK. He's talking about Nigel Farage. Now, you're a completely mainstream political party. So this is nuts.
Absolutely right. I mean, they can't define Islamophobia, and they can't seem to define far right. They're just throwing this out because there's a bunch of thugs and there's very few minimal sort of characters, but they forget there's a bunch of people in this country, the majority, who are angry, and they're being classified as far right. It's absolute farcical, and I get very insulted by it because I'm a Thatcherite. There, I've said it. Oh dear, what am I? I must be far right. But what I want is a low taxes, small state, all those things that defend our borders. Good defence. In terms of our army, etc. All those sorts of things. If that is far right, then I'm far right, and I'm proud to be.
I mean,
The
Tom,
guy-
sorry, finish your point, Howard.
No, carry on. Go on.
Well, I was just going to say, it's a really interesting point, isn't it, Tom? First, though, you know what's so important about being independent is I will only ever tell you about products that I use and truly believe in and think can improve your life. And one of those products is Verso. So when I entered my 40s, I decided that it was really important to stay healthy and worry about aging, actually. Which we all worry about, right? So I'm doing the things that you do when you enter your 40s because you realize that it's harder to keep the weight off. So I'm exercising virtually every day, taking my nutrition seriously with the 16-8 fast, but it's only got me so far. And what I learned is that scientists like David Sinclair have proven we can actually reverse aging with interventions that go beyond healthy habits. So I was looking for a product that I knew would enhance everything I was already doing, but was also backed up with solid evidence. That product is Cellbean by Verso. It is scientifically proven with ingredients that fight the effects of aging by increasing NAD+ levels. Now, NAD+ is so important because it is the stuff that powers every cell in your body. I've been taking the product for a number of months now. Right at the start of my day, it's been genuinely transformative. Fasting's easier, the fat's down, I'm eating less too, and that's due to its blood sugar regulating effects, which lead to fewer cravings. Sleep as well. Cellbean will actually help you sleep better. So this product in the long term will take years off your life. I would love you to experience the same thing. And Verso publishes third-party testing from each batch produced to guarantee that you are getting what you pay for. Now, Verso is giving you an amazing offer today. So if you head right now to buy.ver.so/outspoken, you will save 15% on your first order. All you need to do is use the coupon code outspoken. I've put the link, by the way, in our YouTube and Rumble description, so you can just click on it through there. But I will repeat the address as well, buy.ver.so/outspoken. Use the coupon code outspoken. If Margaret Thatcher were alive today, Starmer would call her far right.
Yeah, because she was, as he just said in that clip you played, a populist and a nationalist. I mean, in my eyes, populist is someone who takes on the concerns of the majority of people, and a nationalist is someone who puts the interests of the nation and the cohesion of the nation above most other things. I think they're great things. I'm worried that we have a prime minister who thinks they are bad things, and I would be considered far right, Dan. I'm told that I'm far right, fascist, every ist you can imagine. And the funny thing is, 9 times out of 10, the people who tell me this are, straight, white, male, privileged, middle class, whatever. And, as I alluded to, I tick quite a lot of, diversity tick boxes. And I just find it funny that I'm the one kind of, defending populism and nationalism. And I have people calling me who, I don't know, I thought I'm a victim in their oppression Olympics, but they're calling me Islamophobic. I'm like, well, I'm the one from a Muslim background, not you. It's insane.
Oppression Olympics. I love that. And actually, it leads very nicely to a campaign that Nigel Farage, the leader of Reform UK, has launched today, because he believes what you're talking about, Tom, that sort of middle-class shame about what it means to be British and about populism and about our history actually comes from education and the fact that young folk are having their minds poisoned. So watch Nigel set up why he feels this way.
During the general election, I said again and again, we're a party that's going to fight against the poisoning of the minds of our young people. Why did I say that? Well, very simple, because the march of the left through all of our educational institutions has been quite extraordinary. And I talked about the fact, we say, oh, aren't we terrible? We're the only country that ever took part in slavery, without telling anybody that actually it was the Royal Navy at huge cost that drove slavery off the high seas, and people need to be taught balance. We're teaching kids now the empire was truly evil. Well, a lot of countries around Europe have had empires, but none of them have a commonwealth. None of them actually have a relationship with their former colonies. And so much, when you think about this little island and the incredible history that we've had, the amazing things that we've done for the world, in the world, be it innovation, be it development, you could even argue the spread of Christianity, so many things that we've done genuinely to help people. And yet, our kids are being told everything about our past is poisonous. Well, those chickens are coming home to roost.
Now, what prompted Nigel talking about this was the British Social Attitudes Survey, which has been running for 4 decades. And in 2013, when Brits were asked whether they were proud or very proud of Britain's history, 86% of people said yes. That has now fallen to 64%. But Nigel is most disturbed about the under 25 age group because it has fallen to below 40%, which means 60% of youngsters have essentially no respect or love for our country's history, Howard Cox, which is an insane thing, given this is something that we are teaching our kids. We are teaching our kids to be ashamed of the UK.
Well, as you know, Dan, and just like you in terms of the issue about homosexuality and being rejected in this country, I've got a daughter and she lives with a gay friend of hers, and I'm proud of her and that sort of thing. But when you talk to them about anything to do with history or what's happened to our past, I talk to youngsters, her friends, a lot of their friends, etc. They've never been taught history of England. They've been taught about Middle East issues, or they're talking about China and how great China is, etc. for the world. All those sorts of things are being told to them. They are not taught. In fact, I even spoke to one person and said, "What do you know what happened in World War II?" And the response was, "Oh, sorry, who won that one?" That, and then you start talking about Churchill and things like that. Oh, sorry, who's that? Oh, he's a horrible person, isn't he? He killed people out in India and all those sorts of things. All this mischievous comments that come out, but no positivity about being proud British. You guys are young. I'm 70 years of age this year, and all I can say is I'm glad I'm there, because the next 20 or 30 years of my life, I don't be living in this world, Dan. I'm sorry, mate.
I'm sort of in the middle. I'm in the middle, but actually Nigel does talk a little bit about that World War II thing, Howard, because I think his prescription is that the further we get away from that, the more people lose pride in being British. And I think it's true. I mean, one of the biggest lessons for me growing up was speaking to my 3 grandparents who all fought in World War II. And it taught me so much. And it made me really appreciate what they did and the life that they gave us, which is something that obviously the younger generations don't have. So, Tom, I'll come to you, but first, watch what Nigel had to say about this.
And if you tell people the country is awful, that it stands for bad things, well, why should they respect the rule of law? Why should they have any respect for law and order? This is part of societal decline. It's part of social decline. It's something we should be deeply worried about. And I suspect now that Labour are in, the attacks on our past, on our culture, on who we are going to get even worse. So, folks, just think about it. Are you proud of what your forebears did? And yes, I know the Second World War generation are dying out, so I understand why there might be slightly less pride in our immediate past. If your father or your mother was involved in the war, if your family lost people in either one of the wars, I do understand for a younger generation that is further away. But still, believe you me, the root of this problem is the poisoning of our kids' minds. And we in Reform are unafraid to stand up and say that, and to point the finger, not just at this Labour government, but at a Tory party that has allowed all of this to happen.
Tom Sullivan, your view?
Well, I know this for a fact because 10 years ago I was in sixth form, and I remember very clearly in London, that's where I was born and grew up, it wasn't cool to be white. People would say stuff like white people don't have a culture, and this was kind of taken as fact and reinforced by teachers in the classroom. We would talk about the Cuban Revolution and the evil of the British colonialists in Kenya, and then World War II, and apart from that there was, nothing else. I mean, I've lived in Eastern Europe, I've lived in the Middle East, and when people have national pride, you can feel it in the air. And it's almost like the glue which kind of holds a society together. And as you can imagine, there are regions of the world with a lot more deprivation and instability as us. And that is the glue that holds them together. And I've obviously taken that for granted, and that glue is being watered down. And I experienced that myself. So God knows what it's like 10 years later from when I was in school. But I know that as a fact, and I completely agree with Nigel.
Thank you so much for watching Dan Wootton Outspoken. Please do subscribe if you want lots more clips and interviews like that. Plus, if you want to watch our totally uncensored after show, then visit www.outspoken.live.